Okay, so thank you all for joining us this afternoon for our peer connection on parenting with a disability. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we live and work on a traditional territories of many Indigenous nations across Turtle Island. While we meet today on a virtual platform, we must recognize the importance of the land and our treaty agreements. We acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territories of all Inuit, Métis, and First Nations peoples. As our Spinal Cord Injury Ontario community encompasses many geographies, we ask that everyone take a few moments of their day to find out which unceded or treated territories you may live and work on. You can use the link www.native-land.ca to learn more. So welcome everyone. My name is Julie. I am a peer support coordinator for Spinal Cord Injury Ontario in the London region. As I just mentioned, we are going to be recording this session. And we're going to keep everyone on mute throughout the session just to cut back on background noise, but you're more than welcome to ask questions throughout if you want to just use the raise hand feature, or if you'd prefer, we'll be monitoring the chat box throughout as well. So if you're more comfortable to put a question in the chat box, please feel free to do that. So today we've got with us Gabby, Norma, Sherry, Rick, and possibly another gentleman maybe joining us, Tony. And each of these individuals has experiences with parenting with a disability. So what I'm going to do is ask, we'll start with Rick. So I'll ask Rick to introduce himself and just tell you a little bit about his journey and how he deals with parenting his children.
All right. Thank you, Julie. Yes, my name is Rick Waters. I had a spinal cord injury when I was 16, so it was about just over 46 years ago. Um, so at the time, it was a diving accident I had, and it was in the C level, like C4, 5, 6 is my injury level. And it turned out to be incomplete. So in other words, when I first had my injury, I had pretty full paralysis from about the shoulders down, and then over a period of time, I gained back some function in my arms and my legs. So I did regain some function. I do navigate the world with a power wheelchair, and I have I'm the proud parent of one child, a daughter. So basically, when I had my injury, I went back to high school right after my my uh, my stint in therapy, and then from high school, I did a degree at York University, and once I finished York, I ended up hooking up with my wife, my now wife, and we had a daughter. So I was in my early 20s when we had our child. Her name's Emily, and Emily had to learn how to get up onto my lap very early in life. So she became a climber, really a really good climber, early in age, and I used to assist her to help get up on my chair. So when I was younger, I used to use a power wheelchair and sometimes forearm crutches, or sorry, a manual wheelchair. So I was a little bit lower to the ground, so a little bit easier to reach her. But I could get my arm around her, and she could put her foot up on the frame of my chair. Together, we'd get her up on my lap. And then after a while, she just became a natural at just, running toward me and just jumping on my lap. The thing that kind of kind of sticks with me over the years is it wasn't just my daughter, but it was my nieces and nephews. They always wanted to come up and get a ride on the wheelchair, and quite often they would ask me, like when I was up at the cottage with everybody, Uncle Rick, don't you want to get out of your chair for a little while? And of course, they just want to play with my wheelchair. So they I used to have a good comfort level with interacting with kids around the wheelchair, and I encourage them. to get used to the chair because sometimes kids get shy over things like that. I'm now a grandparent, so my daughter is in her 40s, and she's got two children of her own. Brooklyn, who's my granddaughter, is 4, and Asher, who's 6. They've gone through the same process of having to learn how to get up on my lap. It's gotten a little bit easier for me because I can just get them to stand on my pedals of my power chair and then tilt it back and let them climb up on me. So we still have the lap parties, and I buzz around with my power wheelchair and give them a little ride, and it makes their day. So that's how we interact mainly. The other way that we're able to interact well is swimming. I'm able to get into a pool, or with help, I can get into a pool. And once I'm in the pool, I can swim. So when I'm in that environment, I'm pretty much on an even keel with my grandkids and with the other kids in the pool. So I find that interaction is kind of a nice one, for me at least, and for the kids being able to get close and interact in a little more playful manner. So that's a bit about me. Now my daughter is she got her kinesiology degree, so she went into rehab and then went on to get her master's degree. So she's doing quite well in the medical field. So that's my story.
I just have a question, Rick. How did
Yeah.
you find parenting like an infant child?
It took getting used to because I have limited hand function. I had to figure out how to use those tabs on the diapers and those peel and stick things. So it wasn't easy, but over time I found I could do it, and I got confident with it after a bit of practice. And sometimes I just needed help. Like sometimes I had to have someone around that could help me, if I was changing Emily, if I was trying to get her dressed or ready for something for the day. So as an infant, I needed a lot more help with her.
Was there any assistive devices or anything you had at that time that if you can remember?
There wasn't really there wasn't much back then. It we're talking over 46 years ago, and there were probably some devices, but I just wasn't that I wasn't that dialed into the whole what adaptive equipment I should be using. So I just did whatever worked for me.
Mhm. Now we've got, just for anyone that doesn't know too, the Tetra Society. I mean, lots more devices too, but the Tetra Society as well, that I know does strollers, cribs. We can put that website in the chat box if anyone wants to take a look at their gallery of pictures. It's just an organization that kind of thinks outside of the box in order to make accommodations for someone. That you can't necessarily go to the store and buy. So they'll come in and look at your situation and try to develop and make something that works for you. So like I said, I know strollers and cribs are a big thing that they've made accessible for individuals. Sorry, just wanted to throw that in there.
So Julie, I'm just going to go off camera just because I'm going to be on the move, but I'm going to stay on the chat.
Okay,
I'll
thanks.
stay on. I'll stay on the line.
Okay, thanks for
Okay.
joining.
Okay.
Okay, Gabby, do you want to introduce yourself?
So hi everyone, my name is Gabriela Carafa. I am a single parent by choice to an almost 3.5-year-old. And I do not have a spinal cord injury, but do have a physical disability and rely on a power wheelchair to get around. I am a social worker, psychotherapist, and consultant, and work with parents with disabilities in my private practice. I also have experience as a perinatal social worker in acute care hospitals. And I also used to work at SCIO Ontario as a community educator and regional service coordinator in the beginning of my social work career. I don't know if there's particular questions, or I should just let's introduce everybody and then I don't know, Julie, do you want
Do
me
you
to get
want
in?
to just sort of take us through the process of what it was like having a child with a disability?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, there was just a lot of deciding factors. So like first I decided to have a baby on my own and what route that was going to take. And I think overall, like everything in terms of my pregnancy went pretty smooth. I will say that having a newborn was a lot easier than I would say around the age of like 6 months to maybe 18 months. I found that actual age a lot more challenging. I really enjoyed the newborn the first 6 months, you know, contact napping, held her all the time, basically all day. I used when we were out a lap baby when she was old enough to kind of sit better, which kind of and I even accommodated the lap baby, so it's not necessarily for people with disabilities, but it is like a looks like a belt, and then you kind of put your baby in the belt. But my mom adapted it so that we would have something like a nice like a cloth to rest between the baby's legs so she wouldn't slide through, because I don't really have a good lap. So we accommodated something and fixed it up. I also used Tetra Society for my crib. So it was very easy. When she was a baby, the crib was on an elevated height, so I could go underneath the crib. And then once she was a bit bigger and it wasn't safe to do that because she was standing up and I was opening the crib and she was taller than me, we dismantled the bases of that, and it rested on the floor and it became like a Montessori floor crib. So that worked out really well, actually. And it was really, yeah, like to me, I found the age where I wasn't exactly holding her the way she wanted me to hold her, which I don't know how to describe, like on your hip. It was something she really enjoyed and not something I could do. So there was a period of time where she didn't really want to come to me for a bit, until I kind of figured out other ways to hold her where she was comfortable. And then it was like this like switch, and then all of a sudden it was like she only wanted me again, and everything was like back to how it was as a newborn. So that part was I found a bit challenging. I think in terms of other adaptive, I didn't have this, but I regretted it, is having the car seats that swiveled so you can get the kid in and out easier. So when she was rear facing, it was really challenging for me to have any part of putting her in the car. But I should have bought that lovely car seat that swiveled, but I didn't. And the stroller was also a bit challenging, even though I tried a few out in the store. I just found it wasn't that safe. Like even in my, like it was safe for like where I knew where we were, but any kind of terrain that was a bit bumpy, I would rather just hold her rather than put her in the stroller and try to push her myself. But I do have attendant care, so I always sort of had somebody with me, which was really helpful. Um, and now she's 3.5, and there's almost 3.5, and there's other challenges in terms of she's at that age where she can do a lot on her own, which makes things way easier. And at the age where she refuses to do a lot of the things that she can do on her own. And I'm definitely faced with a lot of what am I trying to say? Like realities of how physically limited I am, that I cannot make her get dressed. She's at an age where she's getting stronger. She's almost stronger than me some days. And so I'm just trying to balance giving her the autonomy that she so desperately wants to not get dressed in the morning, and recognizing that we have places to go and I have a job and we have to go. And so there's a lot there. But I think with each, what I'm finding is with each age and stage, there are challenges. Some are just parenting challenges generally, and some are challenges with regards to managing with a disability as a parent. There's challenges, and then there's all these amazing things that happen in each age and stage. I don't want to take too much time, but
That's okay. So at her age, is there lots of questions, or is it just sort of, I mean, she's only known you with a disability, right? So is it just kind of,
they're not questions. She makes a lot of statements like, "Mommy, you can't do this." Like, even if something I can't do. And now she started saying, well, can you take me swimming? Can you sit on the couch more often? Because I can do it, but I don't really like to do it. It's hard for me. And so I'm trying to do what I can do physically, but she'll say like, well, she started to ask people, oh, if we go there, is there stairs? She'll ask for me, and I never taught her to ask that. She just knows that I typically am like, oh, is it accessible? Is there stairs? So she'll be like, I want to go see my friend, but there's stairs, mommy, so I'm not gonna go. And I'm like, well, we can figure something else out, and we can maybe I send somebody else with you. And so, I'm really big on not limiting her based on what I can do. I really want her to experience things and also be safe. And just because I can't skate doesn't mean I don't want her to be skating. You've got to figure out who's going to take her to do these things. I can't go down the toboggan, and other parents with disabilities, they may be able to do those things, but I can't. So how can somebody else take her so that she's still experiencing what everybody else is experiencing? But her questions are generally really cute. We also have to answer questions because I'm a single parent by choice. So there's additional questions that she started to ask me. And so, yeah, I just find that her friends, actually, I thought they would be more nervous, like her daycare friends. But when I go there, they like swarm me and they're like, you're Giovanna's mommy. You're Giovanna's mommy. And I'm just like, yep, don't touch the chair. Like, let's just, this is what this does. And so it's fine. Typically, the boys are always the ones that want to figure out how my chair works, even at that young age. So overall, that's been okay. I just anticipate more and more questions, especially as she wants to do more things I can't do. How we're gonna navigate that.
Thanks, Gabriella. Does anyone have any questions for Gabriella? Or comments or any of your own experiences that you'd like to share too? Okay, Norma. You're muted, Norma.
Sorry about that. I've been in my chair 17 years. And at the time, my level is T10, 11, and it was not complicated with the surgery, but after surgery, I woke up with T10, paralyzed from my waist down, complete injury, due to my disc had calcified and turned hard like a bone and was suffocating my spinal cord. And so at the time, my kids were in grade 8 and grade 4. So I didn't go through any of the baby stage, which I'm kind of thankful for. I congratulate everyone that does that. I just think, oh my gosh, I remember what they were like, and just, yeah, having to do that when they were little. Yeah, so my kids kind of took it like I did, like life goes on, and I was still able to be the mom that I was before my surgery. I went to hockey with them, and I could nag them and tell them to clean the room and do all those things. And from a young age, they would put my chair together for me, take it apart when we went, because with them both being in different sports, we would tag team, and I would take one and my husband would take one. So they would help do my chair, and I would drive them where we had to go, and they would put my chair back together when we got there. They learned quickly, like, Mom, there's stairs there, or there's this here, or, kind of looking out for me of any barriers. And yeah, and now they're 26 and 30.
So when you first came home, Norma, were they like, did they just kind of accept right away, or did they have lots of questions? Like, is it your daughter's older, right, than your son?
She's younger. She's
Okay.
the younger one.
So grade
So my daughter was 8. My son was 12.
And did you find differences in sort of how they coped being
My
that?
daughter didn't want to come to the hospital at all at that time. My son, he was good. He came a couple of times on his own and would have dinner with me and then get picked up. Um, yeah, they going to school, it was just the normal thing. They like at first I was kind of like, oh, I'm gonna be that mom, the mom in the wheelchair, like, but they just, accepted it the way we did, and it was life. And yeah, I was lucky. I never went through any real difficult times with them.
Mhm.
Um,
And how did
yeah.
you find their friends when their friends came over? Did they ask questions or?
Um, well, they would more or less like, how do you get in and out of the house type of thing and that, but I do have little nieces and nephews that love my chair, like the little boys. They, as soon as they see you, they have to have their hand touching your wheel, or they want to rock you back and forth and stuff like that. And I've always, when any time young kids approach me with questions, I always answer them. Quite often the parents are like, shh, they don't want you to, but I'm like, oh, well, they're curious. And, I don't go through the whole, like, I give them you know, my legs don't work like your legs, and this is how I get from where I want to be, Um, and they're quite often like, oh, okay, and they just walk away or carry on. Um, I think when we don't make it so much of a, then they don't do it either.
Mhm. Does anyone have any questions for Norma? Because I think Norma, with everyone that's been on, yours is everyone else had kids after their injury, so your situation is a little bit different having
Mhm. Mhm.
beforehand. So I know that can be its own challenge. So if anyone has
Mhm.
any questions or comments, I see that we have someone joining us. Please feel free to ask any questions, or we're always happy to have people share their own experiences as well, or comments.
Yeah, I just guess to build on what Norma was saying is, and that is that the kids are very curious, and they're normally their questions come from a, place of innocence, so they're innocent when they're asking you questions, and they're valid questions. And I'm the same as Norma. I prefer to answer the questions rather than, be have their parents hush them up, like, don't talk to that person. You might you might insult them or something like that. But I think it's good to have an open dialogue with the kids.
Mhm. Okay, Sherry. Oh
Is
yeah, Jeffrey.
I was gonna say this sort of reminds me of like back in like teachers college and classrooms and stuff, the way that you introduce yourself, or at least I would, is you bring in a bunch of things in a little bag, and it's supposed to be like each student can do it as well. But one of the things that I would do is sort of show off my chair, and I know that this isn't parenting necessarily, but as I'm sort of listening to all of you, I have a little niece. Um, she's obviously not my daughter, but she's gonna grow up with all of this, and I'm hearing it, and I'm like, I think it'll be okay, because I'm not gonna lie, I guess there are some worries from an aunt end that I'm gonna have to explain all this to them. And I guess I've been going back to, I'm gonna create my little bag for her, and like we'll talk about the other things, and it's not just disability, and I'll go over my chair, and you don't touch if it's not yours, and all of that. um I don't know. I guess I just started to ramble, but I wanted to say thank you, one. And just two, that even though I'm not a parent and don't plan to be, a lot of this is very relatable to just on an aunt end. And so thank you.
I agree. I've got two nieces and a nephew, and say
Mhm.
I try to be as transparent as I can and
Yes.
not share too much, because I know it, like obviously some stuff they'd be like, oh, that's gross or whatever, right? But age appropriate, I guess, when you're
Yeah.
explaining. And I think it's great when kids can grow up having someone with a disability close to ask questions to, because not a lot of people necessarily encounter someone with a disability. And so I think it's great if kids can just grow up with it, and it's just normal to see somebody in a chair or crutches or whatever.
I agree. And back to normal, Rick saying that they sort of that they what was it? Oh goodness. That they talk to the children out there in the world, that ask them questions. I'm all for that. Smile at the little kids. And if they do ask a question or if they do say something, like, do engage with them, because I don't want people to, I guess, or children to be afraid of disability. I think a lot of us, or I shouldn't say us, but a lot of people are. And so if you can just like bring them in, that's awesome. And I love that, like, I don't know, all your little children have friends that have gotten to know you guys and all of that. And then Gabby had a comment. She said, I was an aunt at 11, 12, and 13 years old. They are a lot more aware and accepting. Just wanted to read that. I know Julie usually read the comments, but
Not at all. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so we still got, not still. Sherry, if you want to go ahead and tell us your story and your journey with your kids.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, everybody. My name is Sherry, and my story was my injury happened around almost 13 years ago, and that was a sports accident. That was a ski accident, and my level of injury is T5 to T7 incomplete. And I have both my kids after my injury. Starting from the pregnancy, before my first child was born, I had a lot of anxiety. I was very worried. How can I do this with my kid? How can I do that? Will I be capable of carrying the kids? A lot of anxiety in my mind. Um, but then, first of all, my doctor also referred me to a specialty pregnancy clinic, and I chatted with the nurse over there, and she's also suggested me to chat with Tetra Society. So I chatted with many different people, and I just decided to go with the flow, and things end up not as bad as I was anticipating, I would say. I was able to being creative and leverage different kinds of ready-made tools or custom tools that my family made for me to help me with parenting the newborns. Um, for example, I also use something like a baby wrapper, just wrap my kids around, on my body, on my laps to stabilize them on my body instead of pushing a stroller. And also decided to co-sleep with my kid. I don't recommend doing everybody to do that, but we end up finding all the possible solutions to parent my newborn. So it wasn't that difficult as I gradually solving the problem one by one. And of course, after they grow up a little bit, every stage of their childhood give me all kinds of different challenges. Like when they finally walking around, crawling around in the household, in our house, my challenge became all the toys on the floor that I have to put well willy and go over them, and that they could hide behind the sofa or under the sofa, or getting to small gaps that I cannot will closer to them. And that's where the negotiation came in. I have to chat with them all the time, try to lure them out of those little tiny gaps. And I still remember the first longer sentence my daughter tell me was when she was around a bit over 1 year old. That time she only speak one or two words at a time. But that day she said, "Mom, you talk too much to me." I was so surprised. And then after they grow up, even a little bit older now they do have some questions reflecting back to our conversation earlier. They do have some questions and being very open about all my injury, what I can do, what I cannot do. I tell them, oh, hey, this is spasm, doesn't mean mom is getting hurt, but my legs sometimes can shake. And they are now um 5 and 7, 5.5 and 7.5, and they love to help. Sometimes they help with grabbing the things from the floor because I hate to bend down or searching for my grabber. I just call them if they're nearby. They can pick things off the floor for me, or they reach for higher things on a higher shelf. They love to help, and they do have questions about sorry, I lost my point. I'll skip that. And when we go outside into the mall, sometimes they will say, "Hey, mom, that's you." And I look to where they're pointing. That's the accessibility parking signs. They're kind of teasing me, "Hey, mom, you got your picture on that." And sometimes when they run into other people in wheelchairs, they will say, "Hey, their wheelchair is so cool. They have a power chair. Mom, why can't you get one?" Something like this make me really released, because thinking back of when I haven't give birth to my first kid, I was worried about if I'm going to the mall with my kid, how can I hold them? And if they see everybody else walking, and only their mom's in a wheelchair, what they will think. But actually, eventually, the um it turned out fine. They are fine with me in a wheelchair, and they adapted with my wheelchair. They like to play with my wheelchair when I'm not sitting on it. They know how to stop me by closing my brake. So everything, I won't say perfect, but we find out all the little solution towards our daily challenges. So yes, that's so far all the thing in my mind this year.
I just have a question, Sherry, actually for you and for Gabriella. Did you, when you had your children, like, did you find that there was lots of information out there to help you, not necessarily decide to have a child, but to kind of know what it might be like to have like a child with a disability, like the actual like birthing of a child with a disability, or did you just kind of wing it, or did you have people to talk to? I know, Sherry, obviously you had children. Oh no, because yours are, sorry, you said 5 and 7?
Yes.
Yeah. Gabrielle, yours is 3. So I guess not that long ago, but still, did you find there was much information out there besides talking to your doctor? Yeah, go ahead, Gabrielle. Gabrielle, sorry.
Yeah, like a couple of my friends already had kids. I mean, I always knew I wanted to have a child, so that part was not really, it was just the how, like how I was going to figure that out. And a couple of my friends already had kids by the time I became pregnant. And then one of my really good friends, we decided that we were going to go through the same like setting for clinic, so that's where we did that, and she felt supported there. So I just kind of followed them sweet. And because I work in perinatal, I was very familiar with all the resources and adapting them. And some of my patients had disabilities. And so I was used to supporting them. And yeah, so that's where I got that piece from. And I know that Center for Independent Living Toronto had a strengths-based parenting, something like that, like for parents with disabilities, that they used to run like multiple support groups. And maybe SPIN, maybe the short form of SPIN. I don't know if they still do that, but that was another resource. But I think because I was working in the field, it was less about, I didn't really need support and resources. It was always like the stuff you don't expect to need is what I'm like, oh, great. Like did not think about this. And so I thought about it a lot, and then there were things that came up, and I'm like, I did not think about that. So I think it's always good to keep those connections that you have with people who have disabilities who already have kids, because you always have questions for them, especially if they're ahead of you in the development and they had kids before you. So you can ask parenting and then how that's complicated and sometimes bettered because you have a disability.
Mhm. I know. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sherry.
Just from my experiences, I don't feel like there's too much of a community resource for parents with disability. Although I've been referred to a special pregnancy clinic, and all they have for physical disability mom is a brochure of Tetra Society. But I myself connected with the Spinal Cord Injury Ontario before, so I went into Linghurst and actually got to um, chat with SCIO staff. So that's the only resources I encountered. I feel like there are a lot of parenting resources, but not a lot for parent plus disability.
So kind of a little bit on that note, for anyone that doesn't know about our peer program at SCIO, we have each region has individuals with disabilities. We call them peer mentors, volunteers. And if you ever are interested in talking to someone who's had children or has children, then we can connect you with one of those volunteers and they can answer any questions you might have. Share their experience, kind of like what we're doing here today, but on a one-to-one basis. So you would just get connected with the peer coordinator in your region, and we can make that connection for you. The other thing too that I was going to say that I've noticed with social media is there's a lot of people that put a lot of information on YouTube and TikTok videos, and I think even on TLC. There was a show, and maybe there's been more than one, but one that I saw, a woman with, I believe she was a quadriplegic, and it kind of took you through the whole process of her getting pregnant and having the baby and what it was like afterwards. And so that, to me, that's a really nice part of social media these days is, just doing some searches in some of those platforms can also give you a lot of information. People, again, are nice to see that they're comfortable to share what they're going through and their situation. Yeah, Gabriella said social media has many accounts of parents with disabilities. Did you want to say something about that, Gabriella?
Yeah, I will say that, it's kind of that twofold. It's so great that there's so many, and don't read the comments. Because it can be kind of like all your anxieties written out for you, and what people think. So I think and I think that that's part of awareness, and that's part of the anonymity of social media. We just have to accept that if people are putting their life out there, there's going to be a lot of comments about it. And it's not always worth writing back to every single not nice comment. It's really about being confident in yourselves and the decisions you're making and the resources you have and the support system you have to be that parent. Because I think social media, it can be hard to read those comments if you're having not a great day and you're like, wow, or people are actually, this is how they think when they see me, and this is what they're, and I also noticed that I get a lot of more attention with my daughter. She is very cute, so I'm going to blame that because I thought that people stared at me before, but people stare at me way more now. They stop and talk to us. And not that I mind that piece. But it's definitely something that we, like me as a disabled parent, I like to kind of keep in mind. It's just always kind of just being in check. And sometimes people are staring, and you just got to keep that attitude of like, you know what, like you don't have to explain things to some random person who's like, that's your daughter, when it's clearly not my attendant's daughter for a variety of reasons. If you see us, so it's my daughter. And so you can get snarky, but it's also important to just be yourself, right? And have that confident. If you're having a bad day, reach out to your support system. Like social media is not where I would go on a bad day, but it's been so helpful to highlight how we're still very capable parents. And that's where I follow so many disabled parents on social media, and that's what I found really helpful is, hey, what are they doing? What devices they have? Oh, how do they manage these things?
Thanks, Gabriella. And that sort of brings me to in the chat box, Jay had said, the wheelchair dad is on YouTube and they have 6 kids from terrible twos to teenagers. I watch him a lot and he inspires so many people who are disabled to strive in life. He also does renovations on his house from his chair, all on his own, and the kids help here and there too. So please check him out as he may inspire many of you as well. Yeah, again, I mean, again, yes, lots of cons to social media and stuff, but I think as far as information goes, it's definitely a plus. And I'm not sure if anyone is looking in the chat box. Thank you, Jaspreet. Jaspreet is putting all of these links in the chat box of all the things that we talked about. Don't worry about writing them down. And for those of you who have just joined us, we are recording this session. So we will send out afterwards, we'll send out an email that's got the presentation link to it, as well as we'll send out all of these links that Jaspreet is putting in the chat box as well. So don't worry, you'll have access to all of them in an email. So I do notice there are some that unfortunately had to join us late. So thank you for joining. I'm not sure how much you've heard. I mean, if anyone has any questions, for anyone, there's another in the chat box, wheelchair Wonder Woman on Instagram is a quad mom. Okay. Nice to get these recommendations too, right? So you know who to look for. Thank you, Ria. Is there any questions or comments, or does anyone who's just joined us want to share your parenting tips? Or if you're just here to listen, that's fine too. But please feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question or share your experiences as well if you'd like. Or you can post more questions in the chat box as well. Okay. That's okay. Was there anything else that anyone thought might be interesting to share? We talked about the Tetra Society again for those that have just joined us. That link is also in the chat box. Gabriella had mentioned that she used them for her crib, so it's a great resource as well to check out.
Maybe I should share one point. I want to share something I found really creative. The most satisfying creation I created for my kid. I got one stroller just in case my family member and my husband want to push the kid, and I bought a secondhand it, so it came with a piece of gadgets that previous owner mounted on it, not mounted on it, added on this regular stroller. It's a standing board, so a third kid can stand while the younger kid can lay in the stroller main body. I don't know what to basket or whatever they call. So I happened to think of one day, hey, can I mount this behind my chair? Because when they are starting to gain more weight, it's becoming too painful for them to sit on my lap. So my husband and I happened to grab that tool and eventually have it mounted, not really mounted because we used all kind of wires and even cable tie, all the steel wires to attach that to my wheelchair, and it's foldable so I can flip it up when my kids don't need to use it, and that worked pretty well. So if I taking my kids out for a walk for a longer distance, and they can choose to stand behind me rather than just sit on my lap and hurting myself. So Yes, I just want to share that we can just try to be creative and use some of our daily tools to adapt our home and our equipment to make it more children friendly.
It's surprising how creative you can get, right? When there's nothing necessarily out there for you to just go and buy, you just have to think and trial and error, right, to see what works and what doesn't. But yeah,
Very true.
you get
And
pretty
some of those accessible parenting tools can be really pricey.
Mhm.
So we have to be budget smart and try to use whatever we can to be creative.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to thank everyone so much. If there is no other questions or comments or experiences that anyone wants to share, I just want to thank you all so much for taking the time and coming on. And like I said, this is going to be recorded and we're going to, it will be on our Core Tree page. I'm not sure if any of you have checked out that. It's coretree.com. And it's an educational platform that we've developed at Spinal Cord Injury Ontario. And it's just got lots of different videos on lots of different topics. We've got something called Core Tree TV where individuals with disabilities will send in videos of them doing sort of just their day-to-day activities. So it's really a great educational platform if you want to check it out. So all of our peer connections are recorded and put on Core Tree. And like I said, you will also get an email that will have the link to the recording as well as all of the links from the chat box. So thank you all for your time. Thank you, Gabriella, you've got a question?
I'm sorry, Julie. I just realized that I was private messaging Jasmine, but I wanted to also say for clothing, I bought a lot of pajamas for Magnetic Me. And that is everything has magnets instead of snaps or buttons, and it made it really easy. But only in the newborn stage because then they start to be able to undo it. But it made things so easy. And that was just something. They're a little bit more pricey, but you know, if you have a 3-4 set of pajamas, something else. So I want to make sure that that's in there.
That's great, thank you. If there is any links that anyone thinks of afterwards that you think might be interesting for people to know, please feel free to send them to me and we can put them in the email as well. If there's any that you forgot about and think about afterwards. We got a lot of good links happening here. Yeah, so again, I just want to thank everyone, Gabriella, Norma, Sherry, Rick, for joining us and sharing your experiences. Thank you, Jaspreet, for your behind the scenes help. And thank you for joining us on this Peer Connections. Next month, we've got travel hacks, I believe on March 20th, which is a Thursday from 3 to 4. So if anyone's interested in that, we'd love to see you there. You just go on spinalcordinjuryontario.org to register. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. And again, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it.